Everybody, so this is my live Zoom mobility and Pilates class, Reformer Resiliency, that I filmed with Sasha. But I had a couple technical difficulties. So you're gonna see Sasha demonstrate, and the audio wasn't recorded, so I will be doing audio over Sasha. And then unfortunately, we only recorded a quarter of her session, which is a total bummer because she was amazing. But I will demonstrate the remaining amount with me just talking as I demonstrate. So please be sure to ask me any questions that you might have. Be sure to join that Facebook page where I'll have a forum where I'll field questions and try to answer them as best I can and start a conversation about integrating mobility so that we can get even better, healthier joints, not only for Pilates, but just for every activity and daily living. Thanks. So we started kneeling on the reformer, facing the back with the thighs right up against the shoulder rests, really trying to be in a nice neutral pelvis. So trying not to have too much of a break in the front of the hips. Sit bones are pointed straight down towards the knees. Front of the hips are lifted up, lower back and lower abdominals engaged. We started by doing some lateral breathing, thinking about inhaling and expanding the rib cage to the sides and back, and then exhale, bringing the rib cage down and together, and then engaging the abdominals without affecting the spine or the pelvis alignment. So unfortunately, I forgot to record Sasha's first set of neck CARs, or neck controlled articular rotations, on her first side. So we're going to catch up with her on her second set on the second side. What I'd really love for you to do is press pause after I talk you through her last two, and then do another set going the same direction, and then reverse the direction so you're doing three going in the opposite direction. Squeezing the block and keeping the rest of the spine absolutely still, you're going to bring the chin towards the chest, flexing the neck, and rotate the chin to the left shoulder. When you can no longer keep flexion and rotate, you're going to drop that ear behind the shoulder blade. Keep dropping the ear behind the shoulder as you lift the chin up and over, and you're going to go into a lateral side bend to the right. Then bring the chin towards the chest over to the right shoulder, and then trace the clavicle as you come back to center. And then repeat, continuing the same direction. I just slowed that down, so we're going to see it in real time now. Chin to the chest, rotate towards the shoulder, staying in flexion. Then dropping the ear behind the shoulder blade, lifting the chin up and over, tracing a line across the ceiling, bringing the chin over to the opposite shoulder, then dropping it down onto the chest, rotate with flexion, and then all the way back to center. You're going to do another round, trying to maintain a nice, slow, even, and controlled pace throughout the entire rotation, as if all three rotations are actually one movement, and then you're going to reverse. So go ahead and press pause and meet me back here. So now we're going to move on to scapular CARs, and you're going to extend your arms and bring the block between the palms of the hands. Drawing the shoulder blades up towards the ears, we're going to try to keep the spine absolutely still, and the arms trying to stay at the same level as you bring the shoulder blades up towards the ears. Then stay up and pull back. Stay pulling back as you pull down. Stay pulling down as you go forward. Now really reach that scapula forward without the spine moving too much, and then stay up and stay forward and go up. Keep moving in the same circular direction. Remember, we're working for a circular motion and not so much a stop-start with just a few endpoints. So we're staying up and going back, staying back, pulling down, staying down, pulling forward, and staying forward as you go up. Once you get to the ears, we'll go ahead and reverse. Stay up. Oh, sorry, we're doing one more set. Stay up and pull back. Stay pulling back and go down. Stay down and pull forward. Notice that Sasha's spine stays really still. She does this really nicely. Stay up and go forward, and now we're going to reverse. So up and forward, forward and down, and try to make your shoulder blades touch in the back. Now keep them touching as they go up. Stay up and pull them forward. Really try to work this forward. Stay pulling forward as you pull down. Keep pulling down as you pull back. Keep pulling back as you lift up. So we're basically going from elevation with protraction, protraction with depression, depression with retraction, and retraction with elevation, and everything in between. Great, so once you're all done with those, we're done with the block. So go ahead and set it aside or put it on the headrest if you'd like. And then we're going to bring hands on each side of the reformer. Make sure your hips are over your knees and your shoulders are over your hands. I have no idea what I'm saying here, but it looks really important, and I'm so sorry that we have no idea what I'm talking about. But anyhow, so we're going to basically be doing the exact same exercise we were just doing, but loaded with your body weight, and try not to make it so much about what the spine is doing and really about the scapula. So we're going to start by engaging the spine into a nice neutral spine. Ribs are lifted, abs are engaged, and you're going to draw those shoulder blades back up towards the ears. Stay up towards your ears and pull back. Stay pulling back as you pull towards the waist or down. Stay down and press forward. Think about pressing the frame of the reformer away and stay pressing forward as you go up. And notice that Sasha did spine there, and it's really about the scapula. So if you got a lot of thoracic flexion there, that's not what we're going for. We're trying to keep it in the scapula. And keep going in this direction. So trying to make that nice smooth movement, continuous. Drawing the shoulder blades. So where are we with Sasha here? Shoulder blades forward and up and back. Now, her coupling of scapular protraction with thoracic spine is actually very common. Just try to keep going for it and minimize the thoracic movement as you circle the scapula around. Once you get back up to the ears, we'll reverse. So staying up, press forward, stay pressing forward, pull down, stay pulling down as you pull the frame and bring the scapula together, and stay pulling together and go up and forward, forward and down and back. Stay pulling back as you go up. So elevation with protraction, protraction with depression. Stay depressing as you retract and keep retracting as you go back up. And then I like to have the scapula pulled down and forward for the next exercise. That's pretty much where I like to reside for any quadruped, plank, etc. work. So now what we're going to do is move to reverse abs. But before we do that, we're going to do some spine work. So she's not going to let the rest of her spine be affected. She's going to start at the tailbone and sit bone and draw those towards her knees. And then the sacrum's going to follow. And now she's going to go one vertebrae at a time. Sasha does a really nice job at these. And it was really helpful to actually have this stick. Notice where that stick is. That's each vertebrae trying to press one vertebrae at a time into flexion. So take your time with these. Normally we do just a cat cow. We move all the vertebrae together, but then we don't really get time to figure out if we actually have spine control throughout our entire vertebrae, and then we tend to only flex in the areas where our body actually has that mobility, and same for extension. We only extend where we have that mobility to extend. So you see here, Sasha's neck has a really hard time flexing, and I'm going to demonstrate how you could just drop the head down. That is not flexion. It's coming up. Wait for it. So her head is dropped down, but her neck is straight, and that's not the goal. The goal is to have a full spine flexion. So here she's going to she's bringing her head up, but she's still trying to flex, and actually Sasha has some previous neck issues, so that's why it's really hard for her. She's got a tight neck for forward flexion, which is going to affect a lot of abdominal work that we do supine with the upper body coming into flexion. So it's kind of nice way to kind of know what your spine limitations and mobility is for when you do any other kind of work. So now she's going to keep pressing the carriage away as she starts to reach the tailbone, sit bone into extension, trying to sustain flexion in the rest of the vertebrae as she goes one vertebrae at a time into extension. This can be really tricky because especially through the lumbothoracic area, we tend to just go one big lump of like 4 or 5. So try to work through and segment each vertebrae one at a time, pressing the arms away as long as you possibly can. When you get to the shoulder blade region, that's when we start cueing using the tension of the upper body, so pulling the shoulder blade, trying to pull the frame of the machine off of the floor so that you can pull the spine forward and up. I'm talking about going up a roller coaster. And so we want our eyes and our chin to be at the top of the roller coaster. Take a big inhale, re-engage those abs because they're not on vacation. Keep the head and chest and spine extended as you start to reverse back out of it. Tailbone, sit bone, sacrum. Yes, she does a really nice job of trying to stay in extension and then segmenting each vertebrae one at a time into flexion. We all have our tight spots, so don't speed through those areas. Take your time through the areas that are most challenging for you. As you get to the shoulder blade area, that's where we start to push the frame of the machine, of the apparatus, into the floor. So you're pressing the carriage or the frame away, and that helps lift your spine up. And then again, making sure that your head doesn't drop down, but we bring chin to the chest, so going for neck flexion. When you get to the end of your full spine flexion, take another big inhale. Feel the abs engaged. Keep pressing the frame away as you start to reverse out of it into tailbone, sit bone, sacrum follows into extension. So remember, you're trying to segment, right? Tailbone, sit bone, sacrum, one vertebrae at a time. It's okay if you're going faster than Sasha is, although I really do like this speed because she's really doing a nice job of working through trying to find that control in each vertebrae. But if you are ahead of us, then go ahead and keep going and do another set if we're not done. So remember, when you get to the shoulder blade area for extension, we're trying to pull the frame off of the floor, pulling the spine through the chest and up to the ceiling, up that roller coaster. You want to have as much as possible even extension throughout the spine, so not a sharp arch or curve in one area of the spine. The more even, the better. And now she's starting to reverse out of it, sustaining extension in the upper spine as she flexes into cat again. Yes, her chin is up because her neck is in extension. When she gets the shoulder blade area, she'll start pressing the frame into the floor to help pull that upper spine and lower neck area into flexion. So now that the spine is nicely warmed up, or it should be, we're going to go into our reverse abs sequence, but we're going to keep that lumbar in flexion, and we're going to extend our thoracic here into pretty much a neutral. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of thoracic flexion, but we're trying to not have too much. The emphasis is in the lumbar, and then make sure your head is looking straight forward. So like if you were upright, you would be looking straight forward. You're going to be looking straight down towards the floor in line with the rest of the spine. And make sure that you're on a light spring, and you're going to reinforce lumbar flexion to pull the knees forward on an exhale. And then as you inhale, the carriage is going to go back only halfway, but do not let that lumbar flexion come out of flexion. All you're doing is try to re-emphasize or reinforce lumbar flexion with the abdominals engaging and pulling towards that lumbar spine. There are several ways, obviously, to do the reverse ab sequence, but this one, since we're working on lumbar flexion, that's what we're going to think about. So it's about the intent and not so much about how far the knees are going or where does my butt go. Are you working for lumbar flexion every time you pull forward? Then that's what we're going for. Be aware of shifting the weight forward or bringing the shoulders forward in front of the wrist. We want to keep the weight back, so keeping all that emphasis in that lower region. You're going to do about 10, exhaling forward, inhaling, releasing the legs back, but staying in lumbar flexion. And then you can go ahead and take a child's pose after you've completed 10. You'll notice that Sasha about now is shaking because she's really working hard and goes into her child's pose stretch. So now we're going to do shoulder cars in this elevated child's pose / collapsed quadruped position. And I'm going to have Sasha show several different options, as I know that everyone can't be sitting back on their heels. If you can, you're going to sit back in your heels and put your hands in the headrest, and you're going to put a block between your rib cage and your thighs. This is going to help prevent your thoracic spine from coupling with the shoulder car and going into excessive extension, which tends to happen as we do these. So here she's going to show an option for people who can't sit back on their heels. You can take the block and put it between your feet on the carriage, and you can stack it at different levels. You can have it stacked the way she has it now, flat like this, and sit on that if that's more comfortable. Or you can go to the next level and just flip it up, keeping it in that landscape position, and sit down on that. Some people find that really comfortable. And then you might want to put your hands in the headrest or on top of the shoulder rest. That works too. So find a position that works best for you where you're not creating any pain in any of your lower body, and coming into that elevated child's pose position. So we want the shoulders and the chest higher than the hips. Really try to keep your sit bones pressed back, whether it's on the blocks or on your heels. So now we're going to go into a set of shoulder cars, 3 on each side. Unfortunately, the video cuts off midway, so we're going to transfer to the video that I filmed, which is unfortunate because Sasha did a fabulous job and also had an enlightening moment, which I am so sad we didn't catch on film. Sorry, Sasha, and thank you for doing such an awesome job. All right, here we go. I like to start with my right arm, but I'm going to demonstrate with my left arm because it's closest to you. To start, we're going to take an inhale and engage the abs and the spine and the legs. Everything is active. I'm not just lounging in my body. And we're going to make a fist so that there's tension through the whole arm. It's not a floppy arm. The whole arm is engaged. And we're going to externally rotate and try to reach across midline without affecting the shoulder. Staying across midline and working and fighting for more external rotation, you're headed up towards shoulder flexion. This is different for every person. So what you want to get to your shoulder flexion wherever that is. When you can't continue into shoulder flexion, that's when you're going to start circling the arm out and back as you internally rotate. Now the key 2 words that you want to keep saying are circle and rotate. So I'm circling back to shoulder extension, but I'm internally rotating for every centimeter that I'm circling my arm. Ends with the arm by the hip in internal rotation, so your palm is facing out, and reverse. You're going to go straight back as far as you can in shoulder extension with internal rotation. When you can't go any further, you externally rotate and circle. Circle and rotate, circle and rotate, circle and rotate. Back to your shoulder flexion. I'm constantly fighting for more rotation as I circle, reaching across midline, trying to touch the opposite hand if you can without the shoulder dropping. Re-engage more external rotation. So you never want to be comfortable with the rotation you just get easily. You want to keep fighting for more range. Now here, as we circle the arms out and back and internally rotate, make sure your rib cage and your spine aren't leaving the block. So you want to try to keep rib cage on the block, spine straight through center, and the head in neutral, so you're looking basically straight forward. Reach back as far as you can. When you can no longer, when you max that out, externally rotate and circle. So remember the two key words. Circle and rotate, circle and rotate. This is my shoulder flexion. Now coming across midline, fighting for more external rotation. Inhale before you start. Engage the body. Try to find more rotation. Remember, always trying to find more. Always rotating and circling, never one over the other. Trying to do both at the same time. You'll find that there are certain areas that you just can't reach. Try not to make the whole circle smaller. Always try to reach for those ends. So I'm trying to max out shoulder extension and internal rotation. I reach my max, and then I start externally rotating, keeping my whole arm engaged, keeping my wrists and my arm straight, not letting it get soggy as I try to reach my end, shoulder flexion, and then taking it across midline. Switch hands. Make a fist, externally rotate, engage. Inhale, engage the abs back, spine, and back up to shoulder flexion. Keep externally rotating. Now, you do not have to stay with my tempo. Try not to go faster. The faster you go, the more areas we skip in the joint, and we want to try to get all that rotation in all these different aspects of the arm positions. Keep rotating and circling, trying to find more of rotation and range. Back up to, so externally rotate more, shoulder flexion, max that out, circle and rotate into internal rotation, trying to head back to shoulder extension, straight back, hands back of the hand, we'll finish at the hips, and then reverse, go back into your shoulder extension. Max that out, circle and rotate. Keep that arm super engaged. Don't let it get soggy and bent. Keep contact of the rib cage with the block. And also try not to let the shoulder blade be rolling forward or up. Right here we tend to lift our shoulder blade up. Try to keep it down. Remember, with this joint work, you're trying to literally only work that joint. Of course, when we do stuff, there's coupling that happens, right? The shoulder blade and the humeral joint work together for arm movements. But here we're really just trying to keep it in the shoulder socket, in that glenohumeral joint. Trying to find more rotation, finding those end ranges, keeping everything whole arm engaged with that fist. Okay, so now we're going to get rid of our block. And we're going to do another set. Sasha demonstrated it beautifully, so you're stuck with me now, but we're going to do another set of those reverse abs, but with a much different focus. So what we're going to do is we're going to get back into our position with that lumbar flexion, the upper spine in neutral. Okay. Let me see if I can get as nice as a spine position as Sasha did. So I'm trying to flex just my lumbar and not my upper. I'm trying to keep my upper spine in as much of a neutral-like position as possible. And then in one count, I'm going to pull the carriage forward, reinforcing lumbar flexion, and then I'm going to take 10 counts to return it back. Okay, so we're going to take 1 count forward on an exhale, as far as I can, and take 10 counts to get back. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and we're going to do it again. Now notice I'm not coming out of lumbar flexion to do this. Lumbar flexion reinforced, and here we go, 10, 9. As I'm releasing back, I'm trying to engage more lumbar flexion, and in doing so, I'm getting strong ab work. And all the way back. Inhaling. Exhale forward, And I like to inhale as I do 10 count. Inhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Try not to let the shoulder blades get involved. 1, and exhale, 1, and 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Now careful, you don't want the neck to be jutting forward. You should be in neutral, looking down between the frame as if you were walking straight forward. 6, 5, 4, 3. This is getting harder to talk. Let's do 4 more. Exhale. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whew. And 1, 5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Try to keep the shoulder blades out of it. Head straight. 4, 3. Reinforcing lumbar flexion. 2 more. 1 count. And inhale. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Last one. Oh my goodness, if you don't feel these, maybe leave me a question. I can take a look. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh boy. Take a child's pose. That's just for you, because you deserve it. Okay. So one thing we didn't do in this session that I had actually forgotten to do that I'd like to do is thoracic cars following reverse abs, especially because you got all of this should be like, whoo, oh yeah, I know exactly where those muscles are. So those muscles are going to stabilize you while you're doing your thoracic cars because it's thoracic cars. So you're going to try to keep your hips and your pelvis and your lumbar super still like they're glued in concrete, and we're going to flex the neck and the thoracic into flexion. Not this. This is staying as it was, just the thoracic. Stay in flexion as you rotate to the right. I'm going left because I can see this way. When you max out rotation with flexion, side bend into a lateral flexion. Now, stay here and start extending the spine, thoracic spine up to the ceiling. What we don't want is the butt to come back or to lean back. Thoracic. So I'm actually thinking about tilting my butt under as I do this. And you're going to reach around to flexion with rotation. Stay in flexion, return back to center. Keep going the same way. Keep your flexion as you rotate. Stay over there as you unwind. So you got to make sure you bring this side back so that it's stacked in lateral flexion. Extend the upper spine to the ceiling. Think about breaking the block with your chest as if your spine is coming through. Over to your other side bend. Flex and rotate towards that opposite hip. Back to center. I'm going to give you one other cue that I like to use. If you're rotating right, squeeze your left inner thigh more. Side bend. Extend. Other side bend or lateral bend. Flex and rotate, engaging the opposite thigh towards center. Back to center. Restack. Make sure this is still in your concrete base. Flexing the neck, flex the neck and thoracic. Rotate to the other direction. Restack the spine and shoulders and head to lateral flexion, lifting the chest through the block, squeezing the block over to the other side bend. Flex and rotate towards that opposite hip. Engage the inner thigh on the opposite leg. Pass through center. Keep going. Re-engage the lower back. Flex and rotate. Lateral bend. Extend, squeezing that block. Break that block. Opposite side. Lateral bend. Engage the opposite inner thigh. We got one more round. Re-engage through the lower back. Flex and rotate. Unwind to side bend. Make sure the shoulder and the head restack. Lifting the chest in extension, not the lumbar. Lateral flexion. Flex and rotate towards that opposite shoulder. Engage the opposite inner thigh. Back to center and restack. Thoracic cards. I like to do them against the shoulder rest. Nice feedback for what the hips are doing. All right, so we're going to walk around to the outside of the reformers, and you can keep a light spring, or you can put a medium spring on this one. I'm actually going to turn down the music. Okay, so we're going to take the block and put it between our inner thighs, and we're going to put the palms of our hands at the very, very edge of the reformer carriage. All right, and we want to be pretty close but not touching the foot bar. You're not going to let the thighs rest against the foot bar. So palm of the hands on the edge. That means you're going to push the carriage out a little bit. So there's tension between you and the carriage at all times. So we don't want to be like this, okay? We want to push into, what is this? Shoulder flexion. So we're going to keep that shoulder flexion, keep tension between you and the reformer. And we're going to do our cat-cows again. You're going to try to segment, but we're going to move a little faster, so try your best to segment, but I understand that it might be a little bit more challenging. You might go a little bit slower or faster. So I'm going to start by drawing my tailbone and my sit bones towards my heels, and then rounding my lower back, then going through my thoracic into a cat position. Now I'm still keeping tension between me and the carriage, and that means that my scapula is protracted. Now try to keep the protraction as you start to extend. Tailbone, sit bone towards the ceiling, sacrum follows. And then I'm going to continue traveling up my spine towards my head. But what I don't want to see, sadly, Sasha did this so beautifully and I could demonstrate exactly what I meant. You don't want to get more extension in one area. We're trying to get kind of an equal extension from lumbar all the way through the spine. There's a tendency to really drop in that mid-thoracic spine. But I want you to think about, there are plenty of times to do that. This is not what we're trying to work on. We're trying to extend the whole spine, trying to keep equal opportunity for every single vertebrae. And find the protraction here. There's also a tendency to elevate and retract. Keep that protraction as you draw the tailbone, sit bone, sacrum follows, lumbar into cat. Keep reaching each vertebrae to flexion. Starting at the bottom again, tailbone, sit bone, sacrum follows, one vertebrae at a time. Extending each vertebrae equally. Find the protraction here. Protraction might be hard for some of you. Really try to protract, not elevate. Tailbone, sacrum, lumbar, mid-low thoracic, thoracic. Keep tension in the scapula, still protracted, keeping tension between you and the carriage. So I know we really enjoy doing these cat-cows or arches, but it's nice to just take a little bit of time to really think about what you're doing with each of the joints. Then you can go ahead and get crazy with your sequence. And segmenting to flexion with protraction. Let's do two more. Tailbone, sit bone, sacrum follows, lumbar one vertebrae at a time, equally extending through each vertebrae, protracting the scapula at the end, and cat, tailbone, sit bone, tailbone, sacrum follows, lumbar, low thoracic, through the thoracic, scapula protracted, keeping tension between you and the carriage. Last one, tailbone, sacrum, lumbar, thoracic, up the thoracic. You should be feeling not only a stretch, but activation through the whole front side, back side, scapula area, tailbone, sacrum. And one vertebrae at a time. We're going to go ahead and stack all the way up. Now imagine if you were stacking your spine against a wall. There's a tendency, got my hair there. There's a tendency to leave pieces behind. So there's a tendency to go like this, but make sure you get each one backwards, not leaning back, but back, stacking back. And there's a tendency to skip this thoracic, upper thoracic / C7 area, and then extending all the way up. All right, so now, what are we doing next? Oh yes, we're doing hip extension. All right, so we're gonna get rid of our block temporarily. I'm gonna put it in the headrest. Bring your foot bar back up to, I like a high bar, but high bar, middle bar, low bar. You might wanna change it once we get situated. You're gonna put one heavy spring and leave that light spring on, or put it back on if you switched. And we normally do this with our foot, hip extension stretch with the foot against the shoulder rest, but I like to get a little bit deeper and more into the bulk of the quad by actually putting the knee all the way to the shoulder rest. I'm not gonna lie, this next section is a little bit hard, but try to stick with me. I promise you'll feel good afterwards, but during it takes a little bit of mental strength. The more you do this kind of work though, the easier it does get. So we're gonna bring the knee all the way against the shoulder rest. All right, and if that's no big deal, and you want a deeper stretch, you're gonna grab your foot, lean forward, and kind of sink that knee further back against the shoulder rest, okay? Couple of things that you can do with the upper body. So Sasha, I think she demonstrated like this. She preferred that, and then she moved to this, which might be how you go. But basically, we want this leg, we want some hip flexion here. I don't want you to be too out of hip flexion, because bringing your leg more into hip flexion, one, is a deeper stretch, right? Because you're taking the fibers and you're stretching away from the center, away from this leg. But two, it also helps reinforce a little bit more, little less of that, little less lumbar extension. It tries to get you to encourage less coupling with the low back. We're stretching here, so the reason why I'm talking is not just to hear myself talk. I'm actually trying to get you to reach that 2-minute stage where we're trying to override the stretch reflex. You have to prime the muscles to be able to release where they've kind of designated that's the end of that's your maximum stretch or your flexibility. So this is a passive stretch. We are going to actively engage all of these different muscles. The next sequence or technique that we're going to do is positional isometric. Positional isometrics. It is not meant to create more range. That's not actually what we're working on. There's another technique to do that. What we are doing is reinforcing the tissue strength at this range that you have right now. We're not really going to create more, but we're going to make you feel good about the range that you have, and you're going to feel like you have a little bit more of an active stretch, working both sides of the joint. Okay, so that's about 2 minutes. So what we're going to do, pick a position that you're kind of comfortable in, and what you're going to be doing is you're going to be kicking your leg forward as if you're like kicking a soccer ball, or you're bringing this back leg. I'm pointing to this one so you can see what I'm saying, but it's like you're lifting the knee to the chest. So I'm pushing through the reformer. Don't do it yet. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to feel like I'm kicking back, but also up, like I'm trying to lift my leg up towards the ceiling. So basically you're doing hip flexion muscles, hip extension muscles, okay? So you're going to take an inhale and prepare. You're going to round the lower back as much as you can, and about 50% of the intensity that you could give me, you're going to kick your back leg, the one that's stretching, through the reformer as if you're going to bring it to your chest. So you're engaging quads, hip flexors, abs, and you're going to hold that for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Now you're going to do the opposite. You're going to tuck your hips more and think about lifting your thigh off of the reformer as if you're doing hip extension for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and relax. Stay there. Don't come out of your stretch. If you want to get yourself a little bit more stretch, I like to grab my leg, give myself a little bit more. It literally was a centimeter. Take a couple breaths. Overriding that reflex. Try to work through that strong desire to escape. Take another inhale, engage the abs, try to round that lumbar, kick through your reformer at 50% intensity, 10. So engaging quad, hip flexors, abs, 5, 4, 3, 2, and try to lift the thigh off, engaging hamstrings, all that back stuff, trying to lift the leg up, 10, 9, I'm getting a cramp, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, trying to tuck the hips, 2, and relax. Good, maybe you get deeper in the stretch. Normally I like to do another set, but that's all we're going to do for today. And then bring your carriage back in. Take that leg off. Walk around to the other side and notice the difference. Sasha said that her leg felt 4 inches. I do feel the same way, 4 inches longer. So let's go ahead and make this leg longer. Now, one thing I like to reinforce with people is do not try to make this leg look like it did on the other side. Maybe this hip is more flexible. Maybe it's tighter. Maybe this hip can't flex as much. Listen to your body and do what feels like this side needs. Okay? So for me, I'm actually a lot more flexible on this side, and I can isolate better on this side. So I start a little bit deeper. So remember here, we're doing our 2-minute priming before the activation. As you're doing your priming up, relaxing, stretching, during that time is a good opportunity to get back into your breathing, trying to relax, trying to calm the nerves that might be saying, oh my God, I'm done stretching. I normally don't stretch for more than 30 seconds. Maybe it's if you are great with stretches, maybe it's too much and you need to back off a little bit and kind of readjust. Maybe you need to add more, which I'm going to do because I'm getting a little less stretch. Maybe you need to tuck the hips a little bit more. So sometimes we get really arched. Think about pushing into this front leg, rounding the lower back. Okay. And we'll go about 30 more seconds. Could do some ankle circles back there if you'd like. I like to do ankle circles back there. And then just a review, don't do it yet, but just a review, we're going to be kicking this leg through the carriage as if you're kicking a soccer ball or like you're going to kick the reformer. And then the second part is trying to reach the thigh back and up. Now for those of you that are super flexible, I would think about your body position more than how getting more stretch. If you're already pretty flexible, that's not something you need to work on then, right? You need to think about working on the body position being maybe less deep, maybe less at end range, and being more strict about not being too extended, being super strict about being in lumbar flexion, and having more strength whatever that position is, okay? So having a really good, strong 50% intensity, not a mild one. So we're going to take an inhale here, tighten the abs, try to posteriorly tilt, and kick the leg through the reformer as if you're kicking a soccer ball or the reformer for 10, 9, 8. So it should be burning all through here. 6, 5, 4, 3, and now we're going to try to lift the leg back and up. So working all this back here for 10, 9, and tucking the hips. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and we're going to relax. Maybe you deepen, maybe you don't. Listen to your body. If you're flexible, maybe that's not what you're going for. Maybe you're just going for strength. Take another inhale, engage the abs, round that lumbar if you can, and kicking the leg forward for 10, 9, 8, 7. You're trying to engage quads, hip flexors, abs. 4, 3, 2, and now trying to kick back and up as if you're lifting off the carriage for 10. 9, rounding the lumbar, posteriorly tilting. 3, 2, and relax deeper if you can. If not, whatever it is that you're working on, take a couple breaths. And we're going to bring it in. And now we should have 2 4-inch longer legs. Oh yeah, that feels good. Okay. Okay, so we're going to drop back down to a light spring. And we're going to grab the handles. Have them ready. Okay, you don't need the block. You can get rid of it. I'm going to put it down there. Combine some of the elements that we were working on with hip extension, and we did some shoulder work. We didn't really do a lot of shoulder work, but so we're going to combine the hip extension with some upper body work. This is a really simple, easy thing that you can do yourself or with clients that I really like doing, is just add more rotation. Can't say that enough. Rotate, rotate, rotate. So, especially with the hips and shoulders. So we're going to work on shoulder extension, and we're going to make a fist so that we have our whole arm engaged. Now here in shoulder extension, make sure that you're not reaching so far back that your shoulder blade is now elevated and forward. Okay? See how that changes the position here? That's not my shoulder. That's my scapula. So I'm going to pull my scapula down and back, and that's my shoulder extension. Maybe it's not as much. Now, here, staying here, you're going to internally rotate, and you're going to try not to let your arm go out to the side or down. When you get to the end, fight for more as if I'm trying to rotate you out of internal rotation. And do the same thing for external rotation. So make sure that the bicep is moving, externally rotating, trying to turn the bicep. And then again, when you get to the end, don't be satisfied with that. Try to fight for more without affecting the scapula. I know that the scapulohumeral, there's a scapulohumeral relationship that works when we do our arm movements. But here again, just trying to work the glenohumeral joint, that stuff deep inside of there, and making inside that socket rotate. Internally rotate, try to fight for more as if I'm trying to rotate you out of it. Hold, externally rotate, make sure that's the bicep and not just the wrist. Check your scapula when you get to the end. Let's do one more. Internally rotate. Squeeze. You see I'm shaking. And externally rotate. Squeeze. More rotation at the end. Okay, we're going to grab our handles. As promised, combining the upper body work with the hip extension. We're going to start by going into shoulder extension. Keep your shoulder extension as you lower down. Bring the spine with you. Let the arms go forward. Keep your arms forward. Hip extension up. Not arch the spine. Hip extension up. Shoulder extension. Lower the heel to the butt. Keep your spine, bring your spine with you. Stay in shoulder extension. Arm goes forward. And press the hips. I like to do half a cycle of breath for each movement. Exhaling. Keep shoulder extension as you bring the heel to the butt. Inhaling. Exhaling. Inhale, hip extension. Exhale, shoulder extension. Inhale, bring everything with you, stay in shoulder extension. Bring it forward. Inhale, hip extension. If your breath is not with me and you like to do the opposite, that's totally fine. Half a cycle of breath for each movement. Shoulder extension. Bring the spine with you. Maintain shoulder extension. Should start getting the shakes. Forward. Hip extension. One more. Shoulder extension. Sustain shoulder extension. You hear me shaking because I am. And forward. Remember, we want to keep the now relationship of the scapula down. reverse, lower down. So I'm thinking about cooling down instead of just plopping down. Shoulder extension. Sustain shoulder extension, hip extension. And arms forward. Lower the booty. So also another way of thinking about it is pulling the thighs up, squeezing to hip flexion, shoulder extension, sustain shoulder extension, hip extension, and forward. Half a cycle of breath. Sit, bring the spine with you, extend, keep extending, hip extension, arm floats forward, lift the knees to hip flexion, shoulder extension, keep shoulder extension, hip extension, and remember there's not that booty back hip extensions here. Last one, sit it down, or pull the knees up, shoulder extension, sustain shoulder extension, hip extension, and arms forward. All right, Sasha really liked that one. So now we're going to spin around and tuck the toes forward, heels against the shoulder rest. If that's an issue for you, go ahead and put your feet flat, but really, this is something that we need in our life, daily life. This is a gait phase, so this is actually pretty important, so it's something that you do probably want to address. All right, as promised, more upper body work with hip extension. We're doing serve a tray. You're going to sit, spine right over the heels. I'm in hip, knee, ankle flexion. Hold your tray. We're going to serve the tray forward as we hip extend. Now remember, it's not a lean, it's hip extension and shoulder flexion. Okay, and then pull the booty back down. Exhale, shoulder flexion, hip extension, and back down. So notice I'm talking about what my joints are doing instead of what the movement should look like, because this is going to look different for each person, each hip extension, each spine position. How much shoulder flexion do they have? I asked Sasha, do you have more shoulder flexion? She's like, yeah, I do. I do too. I should be here. And then pulling back down. I'm going to add one more cue. As you're going forward, at the end, scapular protraction. Give me 2 more inches forward. Now, there's a tendency to combine or think scapular protraction is this. That's not scapular protraction. That's my spine. This is protraction. Doesn't look like much, but it feels like a lot. Exhale, hip extension, protract, and back down. Hip extension, shoulder flexion, protract, and down. 2 more. So you'll notice that you're going to feel quads even though you're doing hip extension. Yeah, that's right. Because that's the tissue readjusting and working as an antagonist. All right. There you have it. Hip extension with some upper body work. And we're going to finish by, everyone has a different reformer, so this position might be different. You could use your block to sit on the floor if you have a really low reformer, but this neck stretches too much. If you just sit on the floor, you could sit on a block, or you can do what I like to do, what I like to call a collapsed squat. And actually, let me change the angle of the camera here. All right, so position I like is the collapsed squat position, so have one knee bent. Unless my shoulders are feeling pretty good, then I'll just sit on the floor. So I'll just see how I feel today. And I'm fine sitting on the floor. So you could sit crisscross, or another option, one more option. So there could be sitting on the floor, sitting on the block, or sitting on your knees, putting that, sitting on that. Lots of options, okay? I'm going to sit on the floor, crisscross. And we're going to go into a shoulder extension stretch. Sasha asked a good question. when we were filming and said, should your thoracic spine be against the edge of the reformer carriage? Sure, why not? This is more about kind of getting a nice stretch with some scapular work. So if this is causing your shoulder blades to really scrunch up, that's not what we want. You probably should get a little bit higher. And actually, I think I will sit on the block. I'm pretty much in between. I probably should be on something lower, but this is scapular work, so I don't want to be quite at end range so that I can move. We're doing scapular cars. You're going to bring your shoulder blades up into elevate and elevate them back. So you're just going to slide along the carriage, down and forward and up and back and down and forward and up and back. So this is a nice way to stretch your shoulders in all those different areas, not just one area, and get some scapular control. Win-win. Up and forward, I'm reversing, forward and down and back and up and forward. Try not to let the chin go around too much. Down and back and up and forward and back and up, and down. And it should feel pretty good on your shoulders. A question was asked about feeling elbow pain or elbow strain. With that one, usually it's an indication of a really tight shoulder, but there's such a big variety of things that could cause that. One of being tight in the shoulders, and all this stuff attaches down there, so it's actually quite common. The more shoulder extension work, the better it does get, but obviously don't feel like you're in pain. You might want to just back off the stretch a little bit and do your scapular cars in a lower shoulder extension position. It doesn't mean don't do it. It just means that that's an end range that maybe your body just needs to build up to, and you just need to back it down. Work the scapular cars so that it gets all of those tissue moving and allows that range capacity before you start bringing it back up. So that was my mobility and Pilates Reformer Resiliency class. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave me some comments and questions. Thanks.